Welcome to On the Spectrum podcast. I am Nick, and that's Steve. As I always do at the beginning of every episode, I do want to point out, as kind of a disclaimer up front, me and Steve do not presume to be experts of anything whatsoever. We are just two human beings who happen to be on the autism spectrum, and we wanted to give our opinions about things. Yes, we are going to use some foul language, and we might talk about things in a controversial way or topics that are a little bit taboo. We might use some language to describe autism or certain things about autism in a way that some people might not like so much, but it's our podcast, so we're going to talk about it the way we want to. Let's see. Any other?
No. I like how
Okay.
Nick has gone on this thing lately where he introduces me. So he's like, "Hey, I'm Nick, and this is Steve."
Well, we couldn't time it very well
It's okay.
any other time we did
all
it.
right.
Before it was like, I'm Nick. Steve. Like,
All right. So today's topic is myths and misconceptions around ASD.
myths and misconceptions. First and foremost, with that topic being said, what myths do you know about? Let's start with what we already know of these things, and then we'll get to like some websites that I looked up.
Well, I know one that I've been asked before. Like, so people will assume that I'm really good at something. So they'll say like, "So what's your thing?" And
Yeah.
I tell them I'm autistic, and they're like, "Oh, what's your thing?" And you're like, "What do you mean? What's my thing?" You know, like every autistic person has their thing.
Yeah, like what are they good at?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can solve Rubik's cubes in 2 seconds. That's my thing. Or
All
I
right.
I do magic card tricks for children. That's my thing.
Well, and that is kind of a big misconception about people on the spectrum, because yes, we fixate on things, and yes, we obsess about certain things, but no, not necessarily we are savants at anything. No,
Wait,
most,
you can't use that term, savant. That's offensive.
yeah, all right. Uh, so like most people have that media or movie version of it of like Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man. And so people are like, well, you got to be really good at something like counting or something technical, or you're really good at computers or something to that effect. And a lot of people are, but I don't know if it's any more or less than the general population that are really good at certain things that they focus on. Right. Um, I
How
mean,
about the myth that vaccines cause autism?
oh, so we already started looking stuff up again.
I didn't say that. I mean, that's one that we already know.
No, it is. It is. It's just I saw you on your phone.
It reminded me
Yeah.
of that.
So that was completely debunked at one point. Completely. I don't even understand why it's still floating
Listen,
around
if you
as an
get the
idea.
MMR, your kid will be MR. That's how it works. That's how it works.
He said if you get the MMR, your kid will be MR. And there's no evidence to support the idea that vaccines have anything to do with anything in that regard. Yes, some people still believe it, but there are still people who believe the world is
Actually,
flat.
what's funny is we were just talking about the having your thing, and this list that I pulled up says all individuals with autism have savant abilities.
What?
No, it says like the myth, but it says truth. While there is a higher prevalence of savant abilities among those with autism, only about 10% of individuals with autism exhibit savant abilities. Some individuals with autism have what are called splinter skills, meaning skills in one or two areas that are above their overall performance abilities.
Yeah. Okay. That makes
This is
sense.
from a government document.
Yeah. So it didn't matter the source necessarily.
It's ADSD. Is this Nevada?
Yeah,
.nv.gov. I think it's the state of Nevada has a list of autism myths. That's really strange.
Yeah, well.
People with autism can't stand to be touched.
Well, a lot don't. A lot have an issue that they don't want to be touched. Now, I will say one thing about that. So it's saying a lot of people do in one direction or another. And that's true. There are people on the spectrum who are extremely talented in one direction. So they do kind of match
So
that myth.
they're good at boy bands.
Yes.
They're good at One Direction.
So there are people who on the spectrum who do match that stereotype, right? Who are really, really gifted in one direction. Like they're super good at playing piano, super good at something. But not everybody on the spectrum is that way. But if you think about it, like in normies, as we always call them, NTs, they have the same thing. Some are super talented at something. Some are really good at basketball. Some are really good at
And
playing
some are
music.
just piles of useless shit.
Yes, some are wastes of flesh.
Although that's counter to what I've been trying to teach people lately about the whole growth mindset versus fixed mindset.
True.
Everybody can get better if you try. I just like to make fun of people.
Yes, we generally do. I mean, we are also comedians. Um, so I mean, it is so there is a level of truth to both of those. Well, not the vaccine one, but there is some level of truth to the idea that we're
Well, it's just like
hyper good at one thing.
the old adage that, um, a lot of stereotypes or prejudices and stereotypes.
Mhm.
Sometimes they have a source of truth
Right.
that's exaggerated.
Right. And that's generally what it is an exaggeration. But think about it. If you were somebody who never really met somebody who was on the spectrum or didn't know that you had met somebody on the spectrum,
Yeah.
and the only representation you had was like the Good Doctor TV show,
Oh yeah.
right?
That's what every autistic person's like, actually.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I actually
That's it.
once cured someone who was having a heart attack in the airport with a ballpoint pen and gauze and some grease from the fried chicken that they were serving at the airport. That's
Wait, are you making the accusation that MacGyver was autistic?
No, but he could have been.
I mean, I've watched Richard Dean Anderson in some interviews, but that would be really funny if they remade MacGyver for a second time, and this time he was autistic.
Yeah. I've actually never seen MacGyver. I mean,
Ever?
no, and the only way
Oh my
that I
God.
know of MacGyver is because of people making references to MacGyver.
You've never watched that show ever?
No, I'm not that old, man.
I mean,
When was that? When did that show come out? Like the 80s?
80s.
Yeah, I was born in 86. So,
Okay, and I was born in
and
80.
the only reason I've heard of MacGyver is because of like pop culture
Yeah.
references to it, like in The Simpsons and other TV
You
shows.
didn't even watch the remake?
No,
I mean, the remake wasn't bad. It was definitely not as good, in my opinion, as the original show.
MacGyver.
Yeah, I thought it was a great show. I still like watching it.
So he can stop someone's heart attack with a piece of bubble gum, some aluminum foil, and a ballpoint pen.
Well, I
You
mean,
need the ballpoint pen, though. You have to have the ballpoint
even
pen.
that kind of is an exaggeration of the show, because yes, he took a lot of like items around him, but he also, in most of the episodes, he also explained the science behind why he was able to do what he did. Granted, I don't know if any
Sounds
of that
like
science is true.
Bullshit to me.
Yeah, well, it's a TV show, so come on.
All right. So what's
Yeah.
another myth, Nick?
Well, I will say one thing of a misconception, not necessarily a myth, but a misconception is, or at least in my opinion, a misconception is when people say things like, well, everybody on the spectrum is different. And there is a level of truth that everybody's different, but no more different than anybody else. But there's a reason why we're all on the spectrum. There is a reason why we can all say that we're on the spectrum, because there are certain traits about us that make us all similar. And so to say, well, we're all different, we all have different experiences, and we all exist differently, it's kind of a misconception that's out there, because if it wasn't for certain specific traits that we carry, or symptomology, if you will, then we wouldn't say that this grouping of people are all similar in a certain way. And so I actually find it misleading to some people when they have that conversation. I think it's also misleading to people in uh, the autism community, because there's a bunch of people who still don't feel like they fit in because that kind of goes around.
Nick, I don't know about you, but I know for a fact that autistic people are a monolith. Okay.
Are monolith?
Are a monolith.
Are a monolith.
You've never
Okay.
heard of that?
I've heard the term
Right.
monolith before.
It means that they're all the same. It's like if you say all black people are X, or all
Oh.
this type of people are this, or so, like, for instance, the idea that if you are, I don't know, I can't think of a good example that's not offensive, but
Well, how
so
about
here's one that conservatives often say. So
Uh-huh.
conservatives will say, like, if there's a black person who's conservative,
Yes.
and then people get mad that the black person is a Republican or whatever,
Right.
and then they'll say, "Oh, well, black people are in a monolith; they don't all have to be Democrats." Like that's an idea of
Right.
how people.
Well, a myth. I gotta stop saying myth, I guess. But I in your terminology, one of those monoliths would be that everybody on the spectrum doesn't want to have social relationships. That's kind of a myth, that we don't want to be social. We don't want to have relationships. And that's actually drastically not true. There is some people who, from observation, look like they don't want to have people around and don't need other people
But
around.
all autistic people are violent. That's a
You heard that?
yeah.
Oh my God. Who would possibly
And have
say
no
that?
sense of humor.
Oh, the no sense of humor thing I get, though.
No
'cause there
sense
are
of
some
humor
folks who-
and all violent. We're all violent.
Well, I mean, to extend this out a little bit further to other mental differences, I guess I want to say in a PC way, there's also a misconception about mental health issues that those people are more likely to be violent. And statistics dictate that people on with mental health issues, who have mental health disorders, are actually less violent than the
It's
general
only when you give
population.
me a bath in hot water.
um No, like with
I'm glad you got the reference.
and because it happened recently, I'm going to bring it up because this is part of where I kind of it's on my mind, is with the Nashville mass shooter. Okay, what, a week or two ago?
Yeah.
Everybody said, well, they have to have something wrong with them, and some people are blaming the fact that the person was trans, but a lot of people said, well, they have to have something wrong with them. But statistically, though, like mental people,
Yeah,
with
you know
mental
what was
health-
wrong with them?
What?
They probably didn't have enough people in their life who actually showed them any kind of support
Right.
or validation or love.
Right. Which I think has nothing to do with the fact the person's trans. I think it has everything to do with the fact that people just really are not actually supportive of one another.
And it's not usually surprising when you find
Yeah.
out who a lot of these mass shooters are.
Yeah.
All the signs are there. It's just no one gives a fuck.
Right. Well,
It's like you have these people who are maybe they're autistic, maybe
Yeah.
they're an incel, which means that
Yeah.
nobody wants to sleep with them. Maybe whatever. But basically, society has ostracized these people. They
Yes.
treat them like pariahs.
right.
And then all of a sudden they shoot up and people are like, oh, I can't believe they did that.
Yeah. Which, come on. Kind of like Adam Lanza, when Adam Lanza did the mass shooting in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, right? A lot of people were like, oh my God, I can't believe he XYZ. I can't believe this happened. How could nobody have known about it? But the thing about it is, like, people might not have known about it, but they also were not trying to treat him like a human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they were treating him as he's autistic, or they were treating him as if he's lesser in a lot of ways.
I mean, personally, I've always liked Adam Lambert a lot better once he started singing with.
Once you started singing with Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Of course you'd say that. Jesus. I actually like his music. I didn't think I would. And then all of a sudden, okay, I only started listening to it a couple years ago, but I actually ended up liking a lot of his music.
Yes. You like a lot of those people.
Those people, he says.
The homosexuals.
Yeah. Okay. The people are part of the community.
No, I got to be careful now because I already got in trouble for talking about homophobia. So.
What do you mean in trouble for it?
In
Okay, we
trouble.
made one video.
For people on Reddit who got upset because
Yeah.
Nick was saying homophobia is a stupid term.
Yes. But we also had people who were supporting that too.
Yeah.
So one thing, like, we're going to talk about like things that we fixate on or things that we focus on a great deal. One of my things is language, which is interesting because I have horrible grammar on a regular basis when it comes to how I write, but I fixate on words and definitions and using them appropriately, if you will. And so one of the things that kind of throws me off quite a bit is this idea of that definitions are so super fluid that they can change on the drop of a dime. That they can just change all the time, anytime somebody feels like changing it.
I agree with you to a certain extent, but you also have to keep in mind that the dictionary doesn't define language.
Right.
People define language, and
Yes.
the dictionary is just a reference. So because language evolves and changes over time.
So in that regard, and I can't believe we're straying off topic this far, but I need to focus on this for a second because I think it's important for myths and misconceptions, is about the definitions. If people define the definition of it, but nobody agrees on what the definition of a word is or what it's used for or what it is used to describe, then how can we have a conversation about a topic if people aren't agreeing
Listen,
on it?
you're preaching to the choir because you know for a fact that I'm extremely pedantic.
Yes.
And I, I got made fun of during the roast we did because of I fixated on people using nationality incorrectly.
Yes, you did get picked on
for some reason. It fucking bothers me when people say nationality.
Yeah,
it fucking triggers me. I don't know why,
Well,
because they mean ethnicity.
Yes.
But like when they say, "Oh, what's your nationality?" I'm like, American. Like, no, what's your nationality though? I'm like,
Right.
fucking America. I was born here.
With what I do for a living, which we're not going to point out what I do for a living this time around, thank God.
You mean what is my fucking ethnicity? What's my race or racial background? That's what you're asking.
So when I ask people with what I do for a living during the day, when I ask people, one of the questions I have to ask them is, what is their ethnicity? And immediately I hear most people say, "Oh, I'm white," or "I'm Portuguese," or "I'm African American," which ethnicity wise, I think African American is defined that way. But when I hear people say, "Well, I'm black, I'm white," I asked you your ethnicity, not your race.
Yeah.
And like, personally, I think race is something that we need to kind of get rid of because it is just a social concept where we're just segregating people just cause. But, and then when I go and ask somebody what their ethnicity is, they go, "What? Okay, so where's your ancestry? Where did your, your great grandfather's second cousin come from?" You know,
well, I mean, to be fair, if you're white, it really doesn't matter.
It does, though.
I'm kidding.
Because like you being not Swedish and me being Swedish actually does matter, because some of those things culturally do get passed down from one generation to another. I don't know how much or how severe that is, but it does get passed down. Anyway, let's go back to this misconceptions, because I think the words and the pedantic thing and the definitions thing tie into that, because like
you think you're all instead of Rain Man, that you're like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
Right. I mean, and like Sheldon does, in my opinion, and I'm going to restate that, in my opinion, Sheldon to me is a lot better of a representation of high function autism than Rain Man. I mean, granted, Rain Man does kind of match up quite a bit.
The character
too.
wasn't written to be autistic. It just happens to have a lot of autistic traits.
Yeah, he essentially got retconned to being autistic later on. But yeah, Chuck Lorre actually said he never intended Sheldon to actually be autistic per se.
I don't think that's a coincidence. I just think that a lot of the traits that you would associate with that type of character happen to be the type of traits that people who are high functioning have.
Yes.
Those nerdy people who get hyper fixated on whatever. I mean, that the character, he gets obsessed with different things.
Like trains, his obsession with trains throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
His obsession with his spot.
So I feel like it was maybe a subconscious thing. Like maybe he didn't make the association, but like a lot of the traits that he was giving to the character are autistic.
Well, because all the traits that we identify anything in the DSM, any mental health issue or any mental difference of somebody, all of those traits are human traits, meaning all human beings have them, but it's the level of severity and I'll say it, the level of dysfunction that it creates in somebody's life. I mean, that's the difference between like somebody having situational depression or having major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
Is the level of dysfunction it creates. So like when people hear me on this show say high function, I'm not saying the person is more of a human being or deserves to be treated better than
you said we should throw all those vegetables in a blender and make a smoothie. That's what you said.
But I'm not saying that somebody who is lower function is lesser of a human being or deserves less rights.
You hear the way he talks when you're around.
Capable. What I'm saying with high function, low function is how much assistance that the person needs to be able to get along in life. Like me and you are high function autism, or what used to be referred to as Asperger's syndrome. And we don't need somebody to be there with us to make sure that we shower, brush our teeth, cook for ourselves, not run into the street.
I mean, speak for yourself, Nick.
Well, I'm trying to speak for
myself.
myself.
A live-in nurse, okay?
You do not. You have a girlfriend.
Yeah, my live-in nurse.
Who you also sometimes refer to as mom.
Okay, that's true.
Jokingly, he calls her mom, not in a sick, Oedipus kind of way.
Here's a couple good ones.
Yes.
Individuals with autism do not feel love. Individuals with autism are unable to, or unwilling to form meaningful social relationships. And people with autism are cold and lack empathetic feelings.
From an outside perspective, I can understand how somebody would come up with that. misunderstanding there, because from an outside perspective, like we've even said it, people have thought that we were cold, we were distant, we lacked empathy. And so from an observational standpoint, I get why some people might think that.
Or that I'm a sociopath. I used to get that.
Yeah, I used to get that too.
Psychopath. So even though people probably don't even know what the fuck the difference is.
No, they had no idea.
Although I recently learned the major differences between the two. But
Ooh, tell me all about it.
so psychopaths typically they're indifferent to other people's suffering or pain.
Uh-huh.
Where sociopaths that's not necessarily true. They actually can or do feel bad about doing certain things, but they have a lack of control
Okay.
over certain, not a complete lack of control, but they have a tendency to kind of like act impulsively.
Mhm.
Whereas the psychopath is more methodical, less impulsive. Like they typically they're calculated.
So you said impulsive. A lot of people are impulsive. Impulsive in what way?
They will impulsively do things that hurt them and people around them.
So it's not like they'll impulsively buy a Snickers bar, but
No.
they'll impulsively like punch somebody in the face.
Yeah, or they exhibit like bad social behaviors, like bullying, things like that can be. Although bullies could also be a psychopath, it depends.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
all
it's like precursor.
not all bullies are psychopaths,
Right. But
but
all psychopaths are bullies?
no, but a lot of bullies they exhibit some of the behaviors of psychopaths, especially if they're hurting other people.
Mhm.
But they're typically less impulsive, at least from what I read. What I was reading about is that they're usually not the type to just act impulsively on emotion. They're more calculated. They enjoy manipulating other people or using people to get whatever they want,
Yeah.
and they don't care about hurting people.
Right. Do you want me to open a window? I just thought of this.
Yeah. Okay. Although it was funny, we had a conversation about whether or not, like, the theory that people like that exist
Yes.
as a function, like in the gene pool,
Right.
because throughout history you would need people who would be able to cull the herd without feeling anything about it. So like if you're a psychopath and you're thrown into battle or thrown into a war and you have to kill people and cut their heads off and you just feel nothing, like I guess that would be useful in that situation where you need somebody to be a cold-blooded killer.
Okay, so based on what you just said, I want you to kind of extrapolate this. Based on that, what would be the function biologically or societally? What would be the function of autistic people?
Entertainment. I mean, you get a laser pointer, you shine it on the wall, and enjoy.
You said for entertainment. Oh,
just go into the shed and make a few loud noises. Just watch their head pop up in the window. So I can make these jokes because they're my people. So
yeah, that's why we can make these jokes. We made these jokes long before we knew.
Probably piss some people off. Whatever.
Yeah, life happens. Well, we're gonna end up offending somebody.
It's a joke.
Hell, the fact that I keep saying high function, somebody's gonna get pissed.
Although
about it.
I would, if I had to, I don't think that autism is a evolution or anything like that. Because in many ways it's in many ways it's a disability, it's a hindrance, right? But there are one of the other myths I was reading about is that autism is new, like that it hasn't been around, but it has been around for forever.
Yeah.
And if you were to try to make the argument or plead the case of why autism could exist from an evolutionary standpoint,
right?
The only thing I could think of is progress, because there are a lot of people who are on the spectrum who have helped move humanity forward when it comes to things like math, science, art.
Well, a lot of people on the spectrum are liberals or Democrats.
Well, not just politically, but I mean like I wasn't really speaking politically, but I guess you could say that. But I was thinking more like science and like I don't know if, like I mentioned Tesla. I was making a joke. I don't know if he was autistic or not, but like people like that, you know, who's obsessed and fixated on the things he was trying to invent in his ideas. He also was a visual thinker, where he would be able to completely conceptualize and envision and engineer something in his head before he even actually started putting anything together.
Right. So when I said liberal, I don't automatically associate progressive and liberal with Democrat, but I put all three of those because yes, a lot of people on the spectrum are Democrats,
Well,
but we're also very progressive kind of thinkers in a lot of ways. Like we look
Republicans
at,
used to be. Well, I was saying
yeah,
because
okay.
I wouldn't associate it with Democrats anyway because Democrats haven't always been the liberal
Right.
party.
Okay. So I really wanted to focus when I
Right.
said all three of them
Sorry,
really on the
that's
progressive
my
liberal.
pedantic
Yeah,
coming out.
yeah. Which I agree with you. More of the progressive liberal part of it because we happen to be far more, at least in my opinion and in my experience, we happen to be far more accepting, inclusive, and understanding of others. So I find us to be far more progressive in that way.
Yeah, I too like Flo, the car insurance lady.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes.
That's all right. That's all right. I mean, we're doing a podcast and we're entertaining people. We have tendency to make jokes. I mean, granted, we're talking about a subject that I take very seriously, even though I find a lot of his jokes
Myth:
funny.
autism is caused by poor parenting or refrigerator mothers.
Wait, hold on. Before we go to that one, because I do want to talk about that one, but I want to go back to the love and the empathy and all of that.
We don't have it, Nick. It's okay. You can tell them the truth. Just let them all know.
Because
we so you know how like David Icke
who?
and David Icke and Alex Jones and all those people, they talk about the lizard people. The lizard people are real.
Alex Jones.
We are
the fat.
we are the lizard
guy,
people,
the-
autistic
the
people.
conservative.
We are the reptilians that control everything behind the scenes, and we are cold-blooded. We don't have emotions. We prey on other people, and we're actually shapeshifters. So I'm able to. I'm actually Hillary Clinton. Like I am Hillary Clinton. I shapeshift into her for fun.
We're shapeshifters.
Yes.
We're the new bad guy in
Have you ever heard of
season 3.
Have you ever heard of David Icke?
I have no idea who David Icke is.
So, dude,
no idea.
don't look into it. But he's a British conspiracy theorist guy who he was the guy who came up with the whole idea that all of the people who run the world are reptilians, shapeshifters. Never heard of that?
Well, I did, but only because of you.
He's considered a like a crazy person. What do they call it in a nutter?
A nutter.
In the UK, they say you're a nutter.
Oh, all right.
Like you're
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, they're calling him crazy.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he believes that the royal family and the Bushes and the Clintons are all reptilian beings,
Oh my god.
and that they're part of the Illuminati and all this stuff. Yeah, he's like this.
Jesus.
But I find that stuff fascinating, so I like to.
I only know of a lot of these people, like Alex Jones
Yeah.
and him, and like prior to you, I'd never heard of Ben Shapiro and like even Jordan Peterson.
I
didn't
don't
even
know
who he
why
was.
I enjoy.
Although I'm definitely not saying that Alex Jones, Ben Shapiro, and Jordan Peterson believe this reptilian thing. I'm
No.
not saying all of them are the same people.
I get
with the same
fascinated by
beliefs.
people with weird ideas.
You really do.
Because I know, I know this is all bullshit, but I can't help. I just want to hear what is this crazy theory about the Earth being hollow and lizard
Yeah.
people living in the middle, and
It is
that
hilarious, actually.
they predate humanity. Like basically, they were our reptilian overlords. I'm like,
wow.
it's almost like Scientology in a way. But
so getting back to the love thing though,
Yeah.
because like that's a really important one to me because a lot of us are accused of having a lack of empathy or a lack of understanding of.
I just told
entities.
everybody that we do.
And I know you just said yes because you were kidding. But like when it comes to that, I do understand how that misconception about us has come about because from the exterior, that's how we seem. Like when I talk to other people on the spectrum, there are times where I'm like, do you even understand that like the conversation is done? Like move on. Or like, do you have any idea how uncomfortable you're making somebody with what you're saying right now? I get that because, well, we don't have a good understanding of that.
Or
So-
people think that I never care about what they say,
Right.
or especially since I have a hard time maintaining eye contact typically during
Yeah.
so people think I'm not listening, or when I am listening that I don't give a shit.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I do, but like I just don't
Right.
have the same emotional response that you do.
Right. I've always found that and this could be my own misconception of things, but this is my belief that most of us on the spectrum actually have a much higher emotional quotient than most other people. We have
Maybe
a hell of a lot of emotion in us.
one thing that that's a stereotype about autistic people that
Mhm.
actually is true for me is I've always had kind of an innate connection and understanding with animals.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
that's one thing that that lady we were talking about, Temple Grandin, she talks about people with certain types of brains or people on the spectrum, understanding animals better. I
Mhm.
don't know if there's any truth to that at all, but I know for me, I've always like when I meet an animal, dog, cat, bird, whatever, I typically bond with the animal pretty quickly. And
Huh.
people around me have always pointed out that animals are just drawn to me. And I feel like I just get them better. Like I can read their body
Right.
language. And I don't, it's not like I've studied it. I just, like, it's one of those things where stray cats have always come up to me.
Right.
I go to someone's house and they're like, "Oh, that cat hates everybody," and the cat comes over to me and like, I know for cats in particular that there's certain traits about autism that might make them feel comfortable because cats are drawn to people who are kind of neutral,
Okay.
calm. If you blink slow, for instance, cats will feel more comfortable around you. If you
Neutral and calm.
right,
And a lot of us have anxiety issues.
but we don't typically show a lot.
That's
That's
true.
what I'm saying. So, but I don't know.
I've always had the opposite reaction. Like, I actually find
Animals,
animals harder to get near
really?
because they're harder to read.
I feel like I just naturally understand animals. I
I
don't know.
I am much harder. Like, I love dogs now, but only because I kind of pushed myself to kind of overcome my angst, if you will, about dogs.
I am.
And so now I love them and I love being around them. But for a very long time in my life, I didn't. I was very kind of scared of all animals because I couldn't read them. I didn't know what their intention was. I
So
didn't know what their motives were.
if there are any other autistic people listening and you are a cat whisperer like me, leave a comment because I'm just
Oh,
wondering how many other people out there have the same experience that I have with
hmm.
animals.
Well, so I forgot to say this at the beginning. If you like or dislike anything that we talk about in this episode, please leave a comment on whatever podcast service that you use. Drop some questions. Tell us some topics you want us to talk about, or you'd like to hear us talk about, or if you're interested in being on the show, drop a line
We'd also
and
like
we'll
to hear
talk
your
about it.
hate. We love hate mail.
We
So
do
you want to tell
absolutely.
us how stupid we are, how bigoted,
Yeah,
how ignorant,
right.
how ugly we are, which you can't see us, but I
Yeah.
assure you we are ugly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, we
Agreed.
want to hear it. We want to hear from you. We want
Uh,
your hate mail.
Yeah, we want either one. Because honestly, if I say something or Steve says something that you find it's we're perpetuating bad misconceptions or myths, let us know what you think about it. Let us know if you think that we're just completely off base. We would actually enjoy having that conversation. Let's go to the next myth or misconception, if
Well,
you will.
what about the refrigerator mom one?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we'll go
I
back to
actually
that.
don't know that one very well.
So the refrigerator mom one to me was kind of perpetuated and or created because they wanted to find a reason why. They wanted to try to come up with a causality, if you will, for autism. And so they blamed the parent. They blamed the raising of the child. And
So, like the idea if you just put the kid in front of a TV all day
yeah,
and they don't socialize
yeah,
enough
yeah.
that they're
Like
going to be autistic.
refrigerator mom indicates like didn't give enough love and affection. So the child learned to not give love and affection in the same way,
Yeah.
relatively speaking, and that's complete bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Because yes, the way we're raised does impact how we treat others. It does impact who we are as people as we get older. But just because your mom did not give you X amount or what somebody might refer to as a good amount or a bad amount of affection doesn't mean you yourself can't learn to be affectionate and emote to others. And by no means can it change the actual physical structure of your brain in that way. It doesn't change your biology. And there's a ton of research out there that says that folks on the spectrum have a different shape, a different density in parts of their brain.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can change that through parenting, if you will. I mean, maybe somebody could argue that your brain changes shape or whatever throughout your lifetime. But I, again, not an expert in anything. I can't imagine that your basic DNA of the shape of your brain is going to be altered because
So
your mom didn't hug you enough.
there's two that I would like
Okay.
to cover too. Being able to handle something sometimes doesn't mean we can do it all the time.
Completely and absolutely agreed. But isn't that true for all humans?
Yes, maybe not.
I mean, maybe a little bit more severely for us. I mean, I'll say this much. I recently, just the other day, was out of spoons. Steve, have you heard that term before when it comes
uh,
to autism?
no, Nick, I have never heard that. Please explain for our audience.
I was going to explain it for them either way, but okay.
I
So
was being a
it's
good.
yeah, you really were, and I just thought it was funny the way you articulated it. Anyway, so the idea of spoons is a concept I heard about and read about a couple of years back. That we start off our morning with X amount of spoons, and it's just kind of a way to communicate to somebody that you're kind of running
Right.
low.
So these spoons, some of them may be pretty and beautiful spoons.
Uh
Some of
huh.
them might be used to cook crystal meth.
Uh huh.
Um,
And they basically represent our ability, our tolerance in our day, our ability to handle things in our day, and or our sensory overload when we run out. And so I actually had a day the other day where I was just out of spoons altogether, and I was bringing my daughter to karate. And I already knew I'd run out of spoons that day because I had kind of a stressful day. I had kind of a big deal emotional day because of what I do for a living. And I got to karate with her. I was just bringing her to karate, and I just felt like I was completely out of spoons. I didn't want to be around anybody. I couldn't handle noise anymore, and my senses were going crazy. And I just felt a whole lot of stress and anxiety in me, and just
and
ugh,
that's when you go to your friend
and
Jack Daniels
yeah,
and
well, a lot of people do. And but then when I left, I mean, I didn't blow up and I didn't melt down or anything like that. But then I left with my daughter from karate when her class was done. And then I went back to the school because I take karate like an hour later as my class. And when I got there, I just felt already so overwhelmed that I just really couldn't function in class very well. And I couldn't focus on what I was doing. And it was just really hard for me to deal with anything. And granted, anytime I work out or feel sweat on me, I'm already kind of because of my tactile issues. But then already feeling as if I was out of spoons and then feeling myself sweat and feeling myself exercising and my heart rate going up, it just pushed me even more so. And it was just kind of hard to function. And it almost felt like a panic attack kind of feeling
yeah.
on me, almost like a trauma response feeling on me. And it was just really hard to function. Then when I got home from class, I told my fiance that I was just out of spoons, and she understood what I meant. And she was like, "Okay, what can I do for you?" And I was like, "There's nothing you can do for me, you know that." And so I just needed time away from things and to kind of get out of my head and kind
That's
of,
when I would
ugh.
put on a video game and veg out for a
Right,
while.
which in our community is referred to as stimming. And that's kind of how we cope. It's kind of how we, comfort ourselves, if you will. And
Yeah.
so it was just a bad day. I haven't had a day like that for a long time.
You need some iced tea.
Yeah. I mean, I had a cup of coffee because that's something that kind of calms me down is coffee. I love coffee.
You see the guy who did the song "Good Day" or whatever?
Good day.
I don't know. I was trying to make a
What?
joke. It didn't work.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So,
Yeah.
um, before we wrap up this particular episode,
Oh, we're already at that point.
I don't know. I think we are.
Oh, all right. Do you really feel we're there? Oh,
Before we wrap up,
okay.
there's the biggest myth of all.
Biggest myth of all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Autism can be cured.
Oh, fuck that. One, and that actually goes with the idea that autism is a disease, and no, it is not. And can it be cured? No, and even if we could find a cure for it, why would we?
Yes, there is a cure. It's called eugenics, Nick. And we don't need that old
Which some would
fashioned
advocate.
Margaret Sanger eugenics. We need not that old fashioned Hitler eugenics. Modern eugenics, where you can actually pick out your child's genes. That's the future, Nick. No one's
They
going to
can.
choose to have an autistic child.
If there was a cure, and I'm not saying that we should cure autism because I do not believe in curing autism.
You ever
I don't
hear-
believe it's a thing to cure.
You ever hear that? This is I know how you feel about this already, but I'm
Okay.
going to bring it up anyway.
Yep.
You ever seen that TED Talks with the guy who has Down syndrome?
No.
So there's a TED Talk. I
Uh-huh.
thought I talked to you about this before. There's
You
a
might
TED
have.
Talk of this guy who has Down syndrome.
Uh-huh.
And he was talking about how he doesn't like the idea of people being able to pick what genes their kids have.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't exist.
Right.
And his parents didn't choose to abort him. They didn't choose to do all these other things. They chose to have him.
Right.
And he doesn't, even though he knows that he has limitations
Uh-huh.
or that he's struggled because of having Down syndrome,
Yeah.
he still thinks that his life is valuable and that he has the right to exist.
I agree with both of them. His life does have value, and he does have a right to exist. I actually am not a big fan of the fact that we can alter genetics and allow people to
But
custom
it's
tailor their
controversial because a
children.
lot of people probably wouldn't want to have a kid with Down syndrome.
They probably wouldn't.
But
They probably wouldn't want to have a nonverbal autistic kid either.
at the same time, I still felt a lot of sympathy
Yeah,
for him because I'm like, yeah, shit. I mean, he's up there basically saying, so you're saying that I don't have a right to exist.
right,
And what do you say to that when you're looking someone in the face and it's like, yeah, I know I have Down syndrome, but
right,
and obviously he had Down syndrome, but he was at a level where he could
right. And
communicate and
I will say in that regard, like if and I guess I can kind of understand why maybe a parent would kind of go in that direction or want to go in that direction, because if you had the way to make sure that your kid had the best chance possible at a less stressful non-struggle in life, or minimize the amount of struggle they're going to have in life, why wouldn't you? And on in a practical way or a very logical way, it makes sense. But at the same time, do you have the right to decide what struggles, what issues, and what your kid's going to go through? I don't think you have that right. uh I mean, people are gonna do it, but, like, for me, there have been struggles in my life that are due to autism and bipolar. Yes, there has been issues that I've gone through that were really hard for me because of those things, or, those things at least contributed to it. But would I give up any of those to be a different person? And no, because those things have also provided me a lot of good things in my life too, and they've also been advantages at times in my life. So I don't like the idea of custom tailoring your children like that. I mean, some of the issues that we go through as autistic people could, if our parents were better knowledgeable or more knowledgeable, or better trained or skilled in people with autism or autism traits or things like that, could we all have a little bit more fruitful or successful or satisfying lives? Maybe. But once we become adults, once we have the ability to make choices for ourselves, it's up to us to kind of make our life what it's going to be for us.
there are so many ethical questions when it comes
There
to
is.
being able to because not only is it like obviously people are going to choose the best traits, quote
Of
unquote,
course.
the best
Yeah.
traits for their kids. They want them to be the smartest, the
Right.
strongest, the tallest, whatever. But think about the people that are going to be able to afford it.
Oh, versus, oh, yeah.
So
The
wouldn't that
availability
create an
of it.
even wider gap between people who are on the lower income spectrum and
Yeah.
then people who are higher income? They're already doing well, and then oh well, all of my kids are fucking Stephen Hawking level geniuses
Right.
who are athletic gods at the same time.
Right. Uh,
And
you're right. You're right. I mean, essentially, we would create like one of those dystopian stories
you
of
have
like
Hitler's
the upper
master
being
race.
super. Yeah, like
These all these rich Aryan kids with
yeah,
uh like bulging Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles and
right.
Stephen Hawking IQs.
Well, if you think about that too, though, that also means that we're also going to have less variety in people, which means we're also going to have less understanding of differences.
Well, other ethical questions, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
what if you could choose your kid's race? What if you could choose your kid's, I don't know. There's lots of weird things. Like, it just opens up a can of worms that I don't think as human beings we're ready for.
I also don't think we should be able to do it. I don't think we should do it. We need to have difference. I mean, I'm a big fan of pointing out the similarities we all have as human beings, just because I
There's
like to focus
actually,
on that for understanding and for inclusion. But I absolutely believe that if we it without that difference, we also wouldn't have some of the progress that we've had, some of the creative ventures that we've had, some of the art, some of the movies, some of the acting, some of the music that we've had, because of those differences, because of the struggles somebody had to go through, and they came out of it
I
and they were able to create that.
that was kind of what when we were talking about earlier, as far as people with on the spectrum throughout history who have
Right.
helped advance
Yeah.
society forward a bit. And I think, um, actually, I had read something about this on Reddit about
Mhm.
how certain people want to eradicate autism, which is kind of related
Right.
to curing or being able to choose your child's traits. Um, it's inspired me. I would like to write a story at some point about maybe a world where that happens. You know, what if everybody's perfect? And it takes somebody who's maybe on the spectrum or a little bit different, who is not genetically, maybe they're made the old fashioned way, couple
Mhm.
of morons rolling around on the sheet spitting out a baby. And that baby who is not chosen, who doesn't have their traits chosen, changes the world somehow, or maybe is able to see things that the rest of the Borg hive collective can't see because everybody's all the same,
Yeah.
And I thought that would be an interesting concept for like a book or a show
Yeah.
or
Oh,
something.
it would be. I just thought of this, like, if we think about this genetic trimming, if you will, this customization of our genetics for our kids, it's essentially ethnic cleansing in a way. Like, it's a similar concept. Like, we're essentially weeding out all of the
So you're
things that we
saying that
don't
they're no
like.
better than Rwanda?
Yes. Yes. I will completely make that statement. Like, I mean, if we think about all the things that create a greater level of struggle or stress or difficulty in somebody's life, if we eliminate all of them from a genetic level, like, nobody would struggle anymore, but we wouldn't have some of the
Oh,
populations that we have.
here's one for you.
Huh.
What if you could eradicate whatever it is that makes people pedophiles?
You're saying, would I do that?
Yeah. What if you could take that out of the gene pool?
Wow. Way to take this from a supporting minimized populations into like
I'm
a
trying to think
creepy
of hard
fucking place.
questions.
Well, it is kind of, and you're
Because
right in that
why would
way.
you want your
What I-
child to be that? Why would you
Yeah.
want your child to go through that? Because
mean,
obviously,
you're
even
right.
if they're not acting on it, it still must be a fucking terrible existence to be attracted
Right.
to kids and you can't do anything about it.
Right.
I mean,
You're actually posing a really good question, because would I want that trimmed out of genetics and existence? Yes, I would. I've got 4 children, and even if I didn't have kids, I still wouldn't want other kids to be hurt by that. And you're saying, what if it's a person who's a pedophile who never acted on it? They're just attracted to kids. I still think we should get rid of that in that person too. Not out of fear that they will act on it at some point, but
all right.
just
Ladies
right.
and gentlemen, Nick Mengele over here.
Wow, really? A Nazi reference, huh?
Yeah. Nick
Jesus.
Mengele.
I always make fun of you because you make a lot of Nazi references, and now you're proving it.
Well, so my obsession when I was a teenager was history.
Yes.
And actually, when I was in college, I was studying history. Was my major. I wanted to teach history. So that's why I make a lot of Nazi references, because I was fascinated by World War II because, well, I mean, the Nazis are just so fascinating. Not that like I don't like the Nazis, but just like the fact that there was like all this weird what do you call it? Like the occult stuff is just fucking weird. Like this government was into a cult and then just weird shit.
I mean, they were also horrible to people, but some of the ways that they mistreated people, like some of the medical experiments that they did and things like that.
Here we go.
They also
Nazi apologist people.
I am not apologizing for Nazis. Okay,
Nick,
I'm going to stop that.
This
statement.
episode is brought to you by Zyklon B.
Oh my God. Go ahead, explain to people what that is.
Well, Nick actually owns stock in the pesticide industry.
Oh my God.
No, Zyklon B was the chemical they used to gas the Jewish people during the Holocaust.
Gas people?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just
No,
Jewish
it was
people.
used primarily for rats, I think, wasn't it?
Yes,
Mice?
it was. And they used it to kill people in concentration camps, which were, yes, predominantly Jewish people, but there were also other people in those concentration camps.
Like people with the tism?
People with the tism, people with any mental health
people
issues.
with the gay?
Gay people, anybody who would have identified as LGBTQ, any different races, any different race.
That's impossible because autism didn't start until the 70s when people were watching television every day.
Apparently.
And also transgender wasn't a thing back then either. So
supposedly. Yeah, according to some.
There may be some G's and L's, but nothing else at that point.
Supposedly.
It was a very small alphabet.
Except for somebody once told me that the Marquis de Sade, that guy who was very sexually experimental, let's call him. Somebody actually once told me that he would be identified as a transgender nowadays.
Oh,
as somebody who would be transgender now.
Okay. Is that based on the DSM or
no?
That's not in the DSM anymore, right?
What transgender?
Gender dysphoria? That they're
yes, it is. It's still there.
Oh, I thought they took it out.
Actually, I got to look 100%. I got to look that up. Well, no, because there's also a difference between, at least from what I understand, there's a difference between gender dysphoria and transgender.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It
Yeah.
used to be that's what the diagnosis was if you were
Right.
trans was gender dysphoria. But
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
they changed it or removed it because of the like where things have gone
No,
societally.
you're
But
making a valid point. I'm actually going to look it up real quick to see if it's still in there because I thought it was. Um,
this episode is brought to you by Woody's Strap-ons.
Dysphoria is a term that describes a sense of unease that a person may have because of a mismanagement. That sounds fucking dumb.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nick is Googling in real time.
Yes, I am.
I might.
A concept designated in the DSM-5 TR as clinically significant distress or impairment related to gender incongruence, meaning in your head one, physically body different. Yeah, so it's still there. It's still there. I don't know how they would differentiate between the two, but somebody figured that out, and
what's a
somebody
gender?
does. But then again, that would also be one of those misconception things because I bet you people who aren't trained in psychology, who are not diagnosticians for psychological mental health stuff, I'm betting money a bunch of them are like, gender dysphoria is still in there, all those people, but most of those people are also assholes about Bud Light now too.
Make a long story short, you cannot cure autism.
No, you cannot, and nor should you.
However,
cure autism.
Before we leave.
Well, hold on. I just thought of this. I just said, no, you shouldn't cure it. But anybody who's got a child who is lower function or who needs assistance the rest of their life in the sense of like a caretaker or live with their parents for the rest of their life because of it, would that parent maybe want a cure for their child? Probably, because both the parent and the child probably have a great deal of struggle and stress in their life because of it, a great deal of dysfunction, if you will. And so they might actually, me and you don't think so. And people who are on our part of the spectrum, so people who can listen to this podcast.
Listen, stop trying to be serious and empathize with people, okay?
Jesus.
I was trying to make a joke here.
I know.
I was going to say, before we go, all right?
Yes, sir.
There is no cure for autism. However, yes. I have in my hand an elixir. It was given to me. And Nick is going to drink it. This elixir can cure autism. It's made from a collection of rainwater from the Amazon, ayahuasca. It's got some glacier ice in it and several components from the MMR vaccine. And Nick is going to drink this and we will get back to you. We'll show you the results in 3 weeks. I'm pretty sure it's going to work.
Oh my God. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to our episode. As always, we appreciate it. And one more time, I'm going to say, if you agree or disagree with anything you heard, please leave a comment, ask some questions, argue with us for all we care. Post some topics for us to cover in other episodes. If there's a topic we brought up today that you want us to cover a little bit more thoroughly, feel free. Also, if you are on the spectrum, if you are an autism advocate, if you are somebody who works with an autism organization and you'd like to be on the show, you'd like to talk about some things, you'd like to argue with us, please drop us a line and we will have you on the show.
Yes, and don't forget, if you are the parent of a new child, do not get the MMR vaccine.
Or get it and realize it's not going to hurt them.
Yeah.
Either way.
This episode has also been brought to you by Jenny McCarthy.
Oh, Jesus. Really? That's what you're going to go with?
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody.